Think about the last time you reached for a power outlet. Chances are, you didn't even have to look. Your hand instinctively drifted toward the bottom of the wall, hovering just a few inches above the baseboard, guided by a lifetime of muscle memory. We perform this minor gymnastic feat every single day, stooping, kneeling, or blindly feeling around behind a sofa just to give our devices a taste of the grid. It is a ritual so deeply embedded in the choreography of modern life that the placement feels natural, almost biological, as if houses were born with these little plastic faces situated near their ankles. But when you step back and look at a room, it's actually a bit strange. Why do we tuck our most vital source of energy in the hardest-to-reach corner of our living space? Why do we prioritize the floor over the waist-high convenience of a light switch? This isn't just a quirk of architectural laziness. It is the result of a century-long evolution involving high-stakes safety battles, the physics of early construction, and a fundamental shift in how humans relate to the invisible force of electricity. Today, we are going to look past the screw-on cover plates and uncover the hidden history of the humble wall socket. To truly understand why the power outlet lives where it does, we have to travel back to an era where the idea of a wall plug didn't even exist. In the late 1800s, when electricity first began to creep into the homes of the ultra-wealthy, it had exactly one job: providing light. It was a direct replacement for gas lamps and candles. Because of this, the wiring was strictly overhead. Imagine walking into a high-end Victorian parlor in 1890. There are no outlets on the walls. Instead, wires are snaked through the ceiling to grand chandeliers or mounted as high sconces. When the first small appliances like fans and early electric irons hit the market, they didn't come with the two-prong plugs we recognize today. They came with screw-in adapters. If you wanted to run a fan, you had to unscrew a light bulb from the ceiling or a wall lamp and twist your appliance's cord into the empty socket. This created a visual nightmare of octopus wiring, with heavy black cords dangling from the ceiling like vines in a high-voltage jungle. It was unsightly, it was a fire hazard, and it was the primary catalyst for an architectural revolution that would eventually drive our power sources toward the ground. The shift downward began in earnest during the early 20th century, largely thanks to a man named Harvey Hubbell. He realized that the light socket adapter model was unsustainable for a world that was rapidly falling in love with labor-saving devices. Hubbell's invention of the separable attachment plug paved the way for dedicated receptacles, but the question of where to put them remained a subject of intense debate. Early electricians looked at the way people lived and noticed a pattern. The heavy, cumbersome appliances of the era, radios that looked like massive wooden cabinets, oscillating fans made of heavy brass, and floor lamps, all sat on the ground or on low-profile furniture. Running a cord from the ceiling down to a floor lamp was a recipe for a tripping disaster. Logic dictated that the power should meet the device where it lived. By moving the outlets to the baseboards, builders could hide the ugly technology of wiring while making it infinitely more practical for the heavy machinery of the early electric age. Safety, however, was the ultimate architect of the low-lying outlet. As electricity became a standard feature in middle-class homes, insurance companies and fire marshals began to take a keen interest in how cords were managed. Physics gives us a very simple reason for low outlets: gravity. If an outlet is placed at eye level, any cord plugged into it becomes a suspended tripwire. A person walking through a room is far more likely to snag a mid-height cord, potentially yanking a heavy appliance off a table, or worse, pulling the live wires right out of the wall. By placing the outlet near the floor, the cord naturally drapes downward and stays flush against the wall or the floorboards. This slack is a silent safety feature, ensuring that if someone does stumble, they are stepping on a cord rather than walking into a high-tension line. It effectively quarantined the danger zone of exposed wiring to a narrow strip along the perimeter of the room where people were less likely to walk. Beyond the immediate safety of the inhabitants, there is a structural reason for this placement that involves the very skeleton of our homes. If you were to peel back the drywall of a standard house, you would see a forest of vertical wooden beams known as studs. Running electrical wire horizontally through these studs is a labor-intensive process that requires drilling through every single piece of wood. However, at the bottom of these studs sits a horizontal beam called the sole plate or sill plate. In the early days of residential wiring, it was significantly easier and cheaper for electricians to run their main lines along the bottom of the wall frame rather than fishing them through the middle of the studs at waist height. By standardizing the height of outlets to about 12 to 18 inches off the floor, builders could create a predictable, efficient path for the home's nervous system. It was a victory for the bottom line, allowing for faster construction and a universal standard that meant an electrician in New York and an electrician in California were essentially speaking the same language. This brings us to the subtle art of aesthetics. For much of the 20th century, electricity was viewed as a utility, something to be used, but not necessarily something to be seen. Architects and interior designers of the mid-century modern era were obsessed with clean lines and uncluttered surfaces. A power outlet, with its industrial look and often messy cords, was seen as a visual pollutant. Placing them near the floor allowed them to be easily obscured by the skirting of the room, the furniture. A sofa, a bookshelf, or a sideboard could easily mask the utilitarian nature of the wall socket. We evolved a design language where the walls were meant for art and windows, while the service functions were relegated to the shadows near the carpet. This helped maintain the illusion of a serene, wireless home, even as we became more dependent on the wires hidden behind the scenes. Of course, the floor-level rule isn't universal, and the exceptions actually prove the logic of the rule. Think about your kitchen. You won't find many outlets near the floor there. Instead, they are perched neatly above the countertops. This is because the work surface in a kitchen is elevated. In this specific environment, the danger of a dangling cord over a hot stove or a sink full of water far outweighs the aesthetic desire to hide the plug. The same logic applies to bathrooms, where outlets are placed near the vanity for razors and hair dryers. These variations show us that outlet placement is actually a highly responsive design choice. We put the power where the hands are. In a living room, our hands are often resting on the arm of a chair or reaching for a lamp on a low end table, so the floor remains the most logical anchor point. In the modern era, our relationship with these low-lying sockets is beginning to face its first real challenge in 100 years. For decades, the 12-inch standard worked because our devices were stationary. You plugged in a television or a lamp and you left it there for 5 years. But today, we live in the era of the nomadic device. Our phones, tablets, and laptops move with us, and they need to be fed constantly. This has led to a minor rebellion against the floor-level outlet. You may have noticed tech-friendly furniture with built-in plugs, or new construction where outlets are placed at switch height to accommodate standing desks and wall-mounted tablets. Even the Americans with Disabilities Act has influenced this, pushing for outlets to be high enough that someone in a wheelchair doesn't have to strain to reach them, usually settling around 15 inches as a compromise between tradition and accessibility. There is also the matter of maintenance that we rarely consider. Outlets placed directly on the floor, as in flush with the carpet, are magnets for dust, hair, and spilled liquids. By elevating them just a few inches onto the wall, builders protect the delicate internal contacts from the hazards of a vacuum cleaner or a wet mop. It's a Goldilocks zone, high enough to stay dry and clean, but low enough to stay out of your line of sight. This height also protects the internal wiring from the structural settling of a house. Walls expand and contract with the seasons, and placing the electrical boxes in a consistent, low-stress area of the wall frame ensures that the connections stay secure over decades of use. Interestingly, the psychology of human habits also plays a role in keeping the outlets low. We tend to view the perimeter of a room as the storage zone and the center as the living zone. By keeping the power at the perimeter and near the floor, designers reinforce the idea that the center of the room is for people, not for machines. It creates a boundary. If outlets were at eye level, the machine element of our lives would be constantly in our face, reminding us of our tethered existence. Keeping them low allows us to maintain a psychological distance from our infrastructure. It allows a room to feel like a sanctuary rather than a laboratory. It is a design choice that respects the human scale, acknowledging that while we need the power, we don't necessarily want to worship the source. As we look toward the future, the traditional wall socket might seem like an endangered species. With the rise of long-range wireless charging and furniture that doubles as a battery, the need to bend down and hunt for those two little slots might eventually vanish. We are already seeing smart walls that can deliver power through conductive paint or induction panels hidden behind the wallpaper. Yet there is something remarkably resilient about the current system. It has survived the transition from vacuum tubes to microchips and from incandescent bulbs to LEDs. It is a testament to the fact that when a design solution perfectly balances cost, safety, and habit, it becomes nearly impossible to dislodge. The next time you're fumbling behind your nightstand or ducking under a desk to find a charge, try not to see it as an inconvenience. Instead, see it as a connection to a century of human ingenuity. That little plastic square near the floor is a silent witness to the history of the modern home. It represents the moment we tamed lightning and brought it into our living rooms, the moment we decided that safety was more important than convenience, and the moment we figured out how to make a house function as a cohesive machine. It is a small detail, but it's one that makes everything else in our modern lives possible. From the high-flying wires of the 1890s to the hidden baseboard circuits of today, the journey of the power outlet is a story of how we learn to live with the extraordinary force of electricity by tucking it quietly, safely, and predictably right under our feet. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the everyday. It's easy to overlook the things we use the most, but as we've seen, even a hole in the wall has a story worth telling. If you've ever wondered about the history of other household mysteries, like why we have hot and cold taps or why doorknobs are at the height they are, let us know in the comments. We love hearing your suggestions, and many of our best episodes start with a question from a curious viewer like you. If your idea is chosen, we'll be sure to give you a shout-out in the credits. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an exploration into the hidden world around you. Until next time, keep looking closer at the world. You never know what secrets are hiding just above the floorboards.